In the aftermath of a brutal massacre, inside the blood-soaked walls of a remote mountain cabin, three small boys slept soundly in the next room. They were completely unharmed. They heard nothing. They saw nothing. Or did they? The question that haunts this case isn't just who committed the murders, but how. How does a scene of such extreme violence unfold just feet away from three sleeping children who remained completely undisturbed? What horror did they unknowingly sleep through? And what secrets might be locked away in their memories? The mystery of what happened in Cabin 28 is one of the most disturbing in American history. If you're ready to confront the truth, make sure you hit that like button and stick with me as we descend into one of the nation's most notorious cold cases. Our story takes place in Keddie, a remote corner of Plumas County, California, nestled deep within the Sierra Nevada mountains. By 1981, Keddie was a shadow of its former self. The once bustling resort had faded, its rustic cabins becoming a last resort refuge for families seeking low-income housing, a place to escape the complexities of the outside world. It was here that Glenna Sue Sharp hoped to build a new life. A 36-year-old single mother, Sue had made the difficult decision to leave a troubled marriage in Connecticut, packing up her five children for a fresh start across the country. She was devoted to her kids, 15-year-old John, 14-year-old Sheila, 12-year-old Tina, and the two youngest boys, 10-year-old Rick and 5-year-old Greg. After a brief stay in a nearby town, they settled into Cabin 28. It wasn't much, but it was a home, a sanctuary where Sue worked tirelessly to create a stable, loving environment. The night of April 11th, 1981, began with a familiar domestic rhythm. Sheila was off to a sleepover at a friend's house. The youngest boys, Rick and Greg, were excited to have their friend Justin Smart staying the night. John and his 17-year-old friend, Dana Wingate, had plans to head into the nearby town of Quincy for a bit before returning to hang out in John's basement room. 12-year-old Tina was at a neighbor's cabin watching television. It was an evening of ordinary small-town life. No one could have known it was the last night of their lives as they knew them. The next morning, just before 8 a.m. on April 12th, Sheila Sharp walked back home from her sleepover. As she approached the front door of Cabin 28, she found it unlocked. The moment she stepped inside, a deeply offensive odor hit her, an acrid smell that seemed to cling to the air. Then she walked into the living room and her world came to a violent halt. The scene before her was a tableau of absolute horror, something her 14-year-old mind could barely process. Her brother John and his friend Dana Wingate were on the floor, their feet bound together with electrical wire and medical tape. John was face up, his throat slashed. Dana was face down, having been strangled and bludgeoned. Nearby, a yellow blanket was draped over another figure. When Sheila lifted it, she found her mother, Sue. She was nude from the waist down, gagged with a bandana and her own underwear, which had been forced into her mouth and secured with tape. She had been beaten with a hammer and stabbed repeatedly. The living room was the epicenter of a calculated, ferocious attack. Blood was on the walls, and the furniture, even the ceiling. Investigators would later find two kitchen knives, one of them bent from the sheer force of its use, alongside a butcher knife and a claw hammer. The bindings were meticulous, using a type of medical tape that the family did not own. The telephone was off the hook and the drapes were drawn, clear signs the perpetrators had taken steps to conceal their actions as they unfolded. But in the chaos of the initial response, a monumental error was made. As law enforcement descended on the cabin, They focused on the three bodies in the living room and the three unharmed boys in the bedroom. It took them hours to realize someone else was supposed to be there. 12-year-old Tina Sharp was not in the cabin. She hadn't slept through the attack. She was gone. A proper homicide investigation is a meticulous process, especially in the first 48 hours. In Keddie, that process broke down almost immediately. From the very beginning, the handling of the case was marred by a series of critical errors and baffling oversights that may have allowed the killers to walk free. The crime scene itself was never properly secured, allowing for potential contamination as neighbors and other individuals moved through the area. The most catastrophic failure was the delay in recognizing Tina Sharp's abduction. One of the surviving boys, Justin Smart, later claimed he tried to tell the first officers on the scene that Tina was missing, but he was ignored. This cost the investigation precious, irretrievable hours in what was now a kidnapping case on top of a triple murder. The procedural missteps continued to mount. In a decision that has been widely questioned ever since, the California Department of Justice assigned organized crime agents to the case instead of seasoned homicide specialists. This focus may have diverted attention away from more personal and immediate motives. Evidence was mishandled, and important leads were inexplicably dropped. The primary suspect, who we will discuss shortly, were interviewed but then cleared after passing polygraph tests, a decision that future investigators would find completely astounding given the evidence against them. The sheriff overseeing the case resigned shortly after the murders, a move that only fueled community speculation about incompetence or a potential cover-up. This is where the case goes from a tragedy to a conspiracy for some. Has something like this ever happened in your community, where the investigation itself seemed to fail the victims? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. While the official investigation stumbled, suspicion within the small community quickly focused on the Sharps' immediate neighbors in Cabin 26, Marty Smart and his house guest, John Bo Bubedi. Smart was a Vietnam veteran with a volatile temper and a known history of domestic violence. He also had a direct and powerful motive. His wife, Marilyn, had grown close to Sue Sharp, who was providing her with counseling and support, encouraging her to leave the abusive relationship. According to later investigators, this fact made Smart absolutely furious. He saw Sue's friendship with his wife as a direct threat to his control. The day after the murders, Marilyn separated from her husband and told investigators she believed he and Bubed were responsible. She recounted how Martin openly hated John Sharp. More importantly, she witnessed Martin burning an unknown item in their cabin's fireplace in the early morning hours of April 12th. The evidence against Smart began to accumulate. During his initial police interview, he voluntarily told detectives that one of his blue-handled claw hammers was missing, a weapon type consistent with the injuries found on the victims. But the most compelling account came from one of the survivors, Justin Smart, the young boy who had been sleeping in the adjacent room, later provided a detailed description of the killers under hypnosis. His account was terrifyingly specific. He said he witnessed two men whose descriptions closely matched his stepfather, Marty and Bo Bubed, arguing with John and Dana before a fight erupted. He then described seeing Tina Sharp enter the chaotic living room, at which point one of the men grabbed her and carried her out the back door into the night. We're about to reveal a handwritten confession that sat in an evidence box for decades. If you want to see justice for the Sharp family, now is the perfect time to subscribe to Crime Scene so you don't miss our future updates. For more than 30 years, the Keddie case file gathered dust, a cold monument to a forgotten tragedy. That changed in 2013 when a newly elected sheriff, Greg Hagwood, who grew up in the area and knew the victims, reopened the investigation. He brought in retired investigator Mike Gamberg, and together they began digging through the mountain of neglected evidence, applying fresh eyes to old clues. What they found was stunning. First, they uncovered a statement from Martin Smart's therapist. The therapist had reported to law enforcement years earlier that Smart had confessed to him directly. He admitted that he had killed Sue Sharp because she was encouraging his wife to leave him. It was a direct confession to the motive, and it had been ignored. Then they found the letter. Shortly after leaving town following the murders, Smart wrote to his estranged wife, Marilyn. In his own handwriting, he penned a line that reads like a declaration of guilt. "I've paid the price of your love, and now I've bought it with four people's lives." This was not a hint. It was a confession, hidden in an evidence box for decades. The new investigation pushed forward. In 2016, a metal detectorist found a blue-handled claw hammer in a nearby pond, matching the exact description of the one Smart had reported missing in 1981. But the final breakthrough came in 2018. Applying modern DNA technology to a small piece of the medical tape used to bind the victims, forensic analysts got a hit. The DNA matched a known living suspect. After decades of dead ends and frustrating failures, investigators finally had a direct, undeniable forensic link from a specific individual to the crime scene. The case was no longer cold. The Keddie murders left a deep scar on the small mountain community, shattering its sense of safety forever. For the surviving family members, especially Sheila Sharp, who made the horrific discovery, the pain has been compounded by decades of unanswered questions. The physical reminder of the tragedy, Cabin 28, was demolished in 2004, but the memory of what happened there endures. Martin Smart died in 2000 and John Boubade in 1988. They will never face a jury for their alleged crimes, but the DNA evidence proves they did not act alone. Investigators are certain that accomplices, accessories after the fact, are still alive today, carrying the secret of that night. Thanks to the relentless work of a new generation of law enforcement, the case is closer than ever to being fully solved, offering a glimmer of hope that the complete truth may finally be brought to light. The fight for justice for Sue, John, Dana, and Tina Sharp is not over. Share this video to keep their story alive. What do you think the final chapter of the Keddie case will be? Let's discuss it in the comments. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you on the next crime scene.